In our headlines on this Tuesday, March 3rd, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. sit down for their summit in Manila on this Tuesday. Meanwhile, the U.S. says, quote, the hardest hits have yet to come, signaling a series of major strikes in the days ahead as Iran responds fiercely. And the government here issues a special travel advisory to the Middle East while assessing the potential impact of the fresh conflict on South Korea as its stock market and currency plunge. We start our newscast on this Tuesday in Manila, where President Lee Jae-myung is holding talks with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The talks began with a welcoming ceremony at the Malacañang Palace. On the summit agenda today is partnership in defense, nuclear energy, shipbuilding, and more. An MOU ceremony will also be held ahead of a joint press conference for details of their talks. A state dinner is scheduled for later this evening. Now, ahead of his agenda in the Philippines, President Lee Jae-myung was in Singapore, where he called for a comprehensive AI partnership. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
Better together. That was President Lee Jae-myung's message at the Korea-Singapore AI Connect Summit in Singapore on Monday.
인공지능은 산업 구조와 일자리, 그리고 우리의 일상까지 바꾸는 핵심 동력이자 국가 경쟁력을 좌우하는 전략 자산이 됐습니다. 세계적 수준의 인공지능 역량을 갖춘 한국과 싱가포르가 손을 맞잡는 것은 필연적이고 또 매우 반가운 일입니다.
Noting that both countries have overcome their limited land and natural resources through human capital and technological innovation, Lee said it is time to channel that strength into AI. To that end, President Lee unveiled 3 key initiatives. First, South Korea will establish a $300 million global fund in Singapore by 2030. This will be Seoul's first offshore global master fund focused on investing in promising AI and deep tech startups from both countries. Second is the Korea-Singapore AI Alliance, a strategic framework bringing together policymakers, industry leaders, and the scientific community.
기업과 대학, 스타트업이 서로의 지식과 자원을 공유하며 협력하는 개방형 혁신 생태계의 시발점입니다. 창의적인 아이디어가 현실로 구현되고 청년들이 지속적인 도전과 성장을 이어갈 수 있는 굳건한 기반이 될 것으로 믿습니다.
Third, the two sides agreed to expand joint AI research to help tackle global challenges. With such efforts, President Lee says South Korea and Singapore will be able to shape the AI industry, a field currently dominated by the U.S. and China.
제조 분야라든지 또는 실용적 영역에서는 우리가 얼마든지 세계 1위를 해낼 수도 있겠다. 사람을 중심으로 한 연구와 개발 그리고 새로운 응용 영역의 개발은 아마도 양자가 협력해서 얼마든지 새로운 영역을 만들어낼 수 있겠다.
Following the event, President Lee also visited demo booths of Korean AI firms doing business in Singapore. He and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung later attended a state dinner hosted by the Singaporean president and his spouse. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
On the international front, tensions are escalating in the Middle East as the U.S. claims its, quote, hardest hits against Iran have yet to take place. Our Chung Hae-rim has the latest.
The United States and Iran are now engaged in active military exchanges following coordinated U.S. strikes targeting Iranian missile and naval capabilities. Speaking on Capitol Hill, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the strongest American strikes have not yet been carried out, saying the next phase would be, quote, far more painful for Tehran. The conflict is expanding rapidly. In a major breaking development, the Israel Defense Forces confirm they are conducting simultaneous targeted airstrikes on military objectives in both the Iranian capital of Tehran and the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Meanwhile, Iran is firing back heavily. Tehran has launched waves of drone and missile attacks against U.S. allies in the Gulf. Drones struck near the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. A U.S.-flagged fuel tanker was hit in Bahrain, and explosions have been heard across Iraq. The expanding Israeli operations come as Washington and Tehran signal that further escalation is possible. At least 6 U.S. service members have been killed so far in the fighting, and President Trump has warned that a big wave of U.S. strikes is still ahead. The Pentagon says additional American forces are being deployed to the region, though no U.S. ground troops are currently inside Iran. As the mutual bombardment intensifies and global energy prices surge, the U.S. State Department is urging all Americans to leave the Middle East immediately. 정혜림, Arirang News.
Iran, meanwhile, has pledged to set ablaze ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, which it claimed was closed. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has declared the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz closed to all vessels. According to Iranian state media on Monday, a senior advisor to the Guard's commander-in-chief said the strait is shut and that any vessels trying to transit it would be attacked by the Revolutionary Guards or Iran's regular navy. If enforced, the move would effectively halt commercial shipping at one of the world's most critical energy choke points. The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow entrance to the Persian Gulf, through which about 1/5 of global oil exports passes. Tankers using the route transport oil and gas from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran, with much of it destined for Asian markets. Meanwhile, tensions escalated further on Monday as Iran launched drone attacks on energy installations in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, both key U.S. allies in the Gulf. Qatar's defense ministry said Iranian drones targeted a power plant and an energy facility. Shortly afterward, Qatar Energy announced it would halt production, a move that sent global natural gas prices sharply higher. Oil prices also continued to climb amid fears of supply disruptions and potential shipping bottlenecks. Brent crude futures for May delivery rose 6.7% to $77.74 per barrel, while West Texas Intermediate gained 6.3% to $71.23. Despite the surge, some analysts noted that the increase was smaller than expected, as earlier projections had warned that oil could approach $100 per barrel. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea receives a substantial portion of its crude oil from the Middle East. Accordingly, pundits here voiced concern about a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz on South Korea. Our Kim Jun-ong covers these concerns and the government's response.
Warnings from Iran telling vessels not to enter the Strait of Hormuz have raised concerns for import-dependent economies. South Korea relies on the Middle East for over 70% of its crude oil and around 20% of its LNG, making it particularly vulnerable to any disruption. The closure would force tankers to take alternate, longer routes, raising shipping costs and causing delivery delays, while experts warn oil prices could climb as high as $100 a barrel. That would drive up costs for key industries in South Korea, while adding to inflationary pressure and weighing on exports tied to the Middle East. In response, the government has stepped up emergency checks as tensions in the Middle East escalate. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources held an interagency meeting Monday, warning that global oil and gas prices could remain volatile, but stressed the country is prepared for a prolonged crisis.
We have stockpiles covering 208 days of crude oil and refined products, and we are confident that supply can be maintained even if the situation becomes prolonged.
The presidential office also moved to calm public concerns. Speaking to reporters during a visit to Singapore, top security advisor Ri Song-nak said there was no need for undue alarm.
We are thoroughly prepared across all areas, including the real economy, financial markets, and national security. And the presidential office is maintaining an emergency response mode.
He added that the situation remains in its early stages and that the government will keep a close watch while preparing measures for a range of possible outcomes. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
And the government here says there are some 21,000 South Korean nationals currently in the Middle East, and efforts are underway to explore prospects of their potential relocation to safer neighboring nations. These prospects were also addressed during a meeting today between Foreign Ministry officials and members of the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee. About 4,000 South Koreans are short-term visitors to the Middle East, while 17,000 currently reside in 13 countries across the region. More specifically, with the exception of diplomatic staff, there are 59 South Koreans in Iran and roughly 600 South Koreans in Israel. Financial authorities here, including the Bank of Korea, operating a 24-hour monitoring system in light of the volatile situation in the Middle East and have shared related contingency plans. A government fund of 13.3 trillion won, or some $9 billion has been set aside to support companies affected by the latest conflict there. The Financial Services Commission has also pledged to proactively deploy its existing 100 trillion won market stabilization fund if necessary. Meanwhile, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-ryong spoke of timely market intervention in response to the events unfolding in the Middle East. Meanwhile, as expected, the Korean stock market tumbled on this Tuesday in response to the fresh hostilities in the Middle East. Our Park Eun-woo reports.
A Black Tuesday in Korea was marked by heavy foreign selling, driven by investor jitters over escalating risk in the Middle East. According to the Korea Exchange on Tuesday, the benchmark Kospi ended at around 5,791, dropping over 7% from the previous session, its biggest fall ever. It's the first time in 4 trading days that the Kospi has fallen below the 6,000 mark.
With heavy reliance on energy imports, Korea is highly exposed to Middle East risks. Recent market leaders, such as chips and automobiles, have come under strong downward pressure, largely due to foreign investors taking profits.
While Samsung Electronics fell nearly 10% and SK Hynix dropped 11.5%, defense stocks rose, including a some 20% rise for Hanwha Aerospace. The tech-heavy Kosdaq also closed at about 1,137, falling more than 4.6%. More than $2 billion worth of shares were sold by foreign investors in the morning session alone. A sell-side sidecar was even once triggered on the Kospi 200 Futures Index at around noon, the first such measure in nearly a month. A sell-side sidecar is activated when the index falls by more than 5% and remains at that level for at least 1 minute. Meanwhile, the won-dollar exchange rate rose 26.41 to 1,466.11. Investors have increasingly turned to safer assets such as gold, with prices in the Korean market once rising more than 5% on Tuesday compared to the previous session. With the risk showing no sign of easing, experts say this week will be key in gauging how much more of an impact the situation could have on the Korean market. Park Eun-woo, Arirang News.
The Trump administration's military campaign against Iran is likely to cement North Korea's commitment to its nuclear weapons arsenal. Now, this is according to observers here. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung covers their thoughts.
Many people's eyes were on potential talks between the U.S. and North Korea, with U.S. President Donald Trump slated to visit Beijing from March 31st to April 2nd to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. However, with U.S.-Israeli operations killing Iran's supreme leader, the chances have become slim, according to experts. The fact that Iran ultimately came under attack despite nuclear negotiations with the U.S. would have eroded North Korea's trust in talks with Washington, they noted. Also, given that it is highly unlikely the U.S. will recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, which is the regime's precondition for talks, the possibility of any dialogue is low.
After what happened with Iran, it's hard to know why North Korea should trust the United States' willingness to negotiate. And when you think about whether the U.S. would send the kind of strong message North Korea wants, the chances of that happening seem very low as well.
Another expert added that Washington's bold strikes against Iran would have rather driven Kim to boost the North's development of its nuclear forces.
Although the regime is trying not to provoke the Trump administration, Kim believes that nuclear deterrence is the only way for the North to survive. It sees strengthening its second strike capability as the only way to prevent Trump from miscalculating or taking one-side military action.
With some arguing that Iran's case could paradoxically push Kim toward dialogue to manage tensions. Attention is focused on what kind of strategic decision he will make and when that will come. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Over in Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron has shared intentions to expand France's nuclear arsenal and to extend deterrence to its regional allies. Our Cho Young-eun explains.
President Emmanuel Macron said Monday that France plans to increase the size of its nuclear arsenal for the first time in decades and set up cooperation on nuclear defense. Speaking from a naval submarine base in Brittany, Macron pointed to Russia's war in Ukraine, China's growing military strength, and recent shifts in U.S. defense policy as key reasons for Europe to take greater responsibility for its own security. Describing the upgrade as essential, Macron said he had decided to expand the arsenal beyond its current level, estimated at about 290 nuclear warheads, a number that has remained largely unchanged since 1992. Macron also revealed plans to launch a new nuclear-armed submarine in 2036, to be named the Invincible.
The half a century to come will be an age of nuclear weapons. France, determined, free, confident, will fully play its role in it. It will continue to strengthen itself, and, for its own benefit, it will anchor this course on the Atlantic to the European foundation.
Turning to Europe, Macron outlined a broader role for France's nuclear deterrent and introduced the concept of advanced deterrence. The new posture would allow France, for the first time, to temporarily deploy elements of its strategic air forces to European allies. He said the initiative was developed in close coordination with the United Kingdom, and that other European nations, including Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, Sweden, and Denmark, had agreed to join the new strategy.
Advanced deterrence is a progressive approach. First of all, it offers our partners the opportunity to participate in our deterrence exercises. This may also involve intelligence sharing, including beyond our borders, or the participation of our allies' conventional armed forces in our nuclear activities.
Shortly after the speech, France and Germany said in a joint statement that they had established a high-level nuclear steering group as part of an arrangement that would add to, not substitute for, NATO's nuclear deterrence. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
In other news now, at this year's Mobile World Congress in Spain, South Korea's top 3 telecommunications companies are seeking to share the significance of artificial intelligence in providing smarter, customer-centric services. Our business correspondent Park Chun-an files this report from Barcelona.
Marking the 20th anniversary of its debut in Barcelona, the world's largest telecommunications event, Mobile World Congress 2026, began on Monday local time. Bringing together around 100,000 visitors from 200 countries, the event highlighted how companies are positioning themselves to meet customer needs amid rapidly advancing technology.
In line with this year's theme, the IQ era, companies here in Barcelona are merging human and artificial intelligence to create a smarter future. Let's see how that vision is turning into reality.
South Korea's 3 major mobile carriers, SK Telecom, KT, and LG U+, have converged at this year's event with a strategic pivot toward agentic AI. By positioning themselves as the core brain and infrastructure of the AI, companies are developing systems capable of independently planning and executing complex tasks, making proactive decisions to anticipate and meet user needs. SK Telecom, under the concept of full-stack AI capabilities, included features like a hyperscale AI model, fraud detection, and personalized secretary-like AI agents.
With the evolution toward agentic AI, we see its role handling tasks on behalf of the user, acting as a true AI assistant. We focused on how much of a customer's workload AI can take over, and how quickly complex processes can be completed with just one click.
KT has set up a booth that blends technology and culture, featuring a dedicated pavilion modeled after Gwanghwamun Square. While most exhibits focused on business-to-business solutions and work models, one thing that stood out was its serving robot.
Based on what you're seeing right now, how many guests do you think there are?
Based on what I'm seeing right now, there is currently one guest, and we estimate...
The robot recognized the number of guests, suggested where to seat, and even offered an apron if needed. It represented the next level of service robotics, autonomously anticipating customer needs and taking action before being asked. Meanwhile, LG U+ showcased voice-based AI services under the agenda of humanizing every connection. The company's CEO, Hong Bum-sik, also took part as a keynote speaker at the opening ceremony, where he emphasized the voice that connects people.
Voice is the most fundamental human means of connection. In an era flooded with connected devices like smart glasses, AI agents, even physical AI, voice will quickly become the central interface of all.
The company also showcased AI agent Ixio's next-generation model, Ixio Pro, which functions as a proactive partner that suggests solutions before being asked. The company said it also plans to make its AI agent compatible with humanoid robots. By integrating intelligence into every connection, the firms at MWC 2026 are laying the groundwork for a future where AI isn't just a tool, but a proactive infrastructure that understands and moves with us. Park Jun-han, Arirang News, Barcelona.
It's been a winter wonderland for the East Coast with a heavy snow advisory at times, and more rain and snow will persist through tonight. Meanwhile, it's 정월 대보름 today when we can see the first full moon of the lunar year. And for the first time in 36 years, a total lunar eclipse coincides with the holiday. And good news, clouds are expected to thin out this evening in most regions. Then tomorrow we are waking up to another chilly morning. Seoul and Daegu starts off at 1 degree and Gyeongju at freezing mark, but under sunnier skies. Then highs will be getting up to 11 degrees in Seoul, and most major other cities will be topping out at 13 degrees Celsius under bright skies with decent air quality. Then typical early spring weather conditions continue this week with nationwide rain and snow in the forecast on Friday. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session.